go.
Existential. That's the Nothing Personal word of the day. Good morning. It is Tuesday, June 4th, 2024, and we're talking about the existential crisis that exists in Major League Baseball. And we're going to lead the show with the two pillars of that existential crisis. One is gambling, and two, it's okay, Bimmel. Don't worry. Don't panic, Metalark. Not going to sully anybody. But we're going to talk about gambling, and we're going to talk about injuries. Later on in the show, we are certainly going to get to a conversation about what's going on in sports media with Stephen A. Smith and Pat McAfee and Monica McNutt and all of the, shall we say, oral fireworks that are surrounding the WNBA, Caitlin Clark, but it really is indicative of a far, far bigger issue. Let's start, however, in Major League Baseball. Two things happened today. One, I feel like I have food in my teeth. I don't know if you ever get that feeling where you have that and you're on the air. All right, I'm going to take care of it. Watch this. If you're watching on Nothing Personal with David Samson YouTube channel, this is my hanky that's for schwitzing, but I'm going to see if I need to do something here. Okay, we're good. We're live, baby. Let's talk about gambling. I'm giving everyone a chance at Metalark. Take your seats, turn the volume up. Here we go. It's going to be fine. Ever heard of a player? I promise you haven't, which may be just the point. Tucupita Marcano. That naming anything to you? He hasn't played in a game this year. He was on the Pirates. Now he's on the Padres. Injured. Had surgery. Word comes out late last night in a leak because no official announcement from MLB. But these days, when Jeff Passan or any other insider has information, they have it from either MLB or the union. We would talk in owners' meetings, Jeff, sorry to say, about what you were going to be given or what other insiders are given versus what they're not going to be given, in what order things are given, when they're given, how they're given, why they're given, and of course, the timing. Yes, it is true. When you are an insider, you are used. You're paid for it. So hats off to you. But getting the trial balloon out there to let it be known that today there is going to be a punishment handed out to this player for doing the unthinkable, the unconscionable, the third rail. Don't bet on baseball. The gambling story in baseball this year has been Ohtani. It's been Ippei. It's been no baseball. That was front and center, 25 font. Ohtani didn't know, and Ippei didn't bet on baseball. So everyone, there's nothing to see here. We're going to let the legal system play out. We'll worry about David Fletcher and his knuckleballs coming up here shortly. But in the meantime, while we're taking your attention away, it's like the 3-card Monte game in New York City. That may be a hugely old reference, but that's a way to get stupid people to give you their money. Hey, figure out where the card is or where the ball is. We do it inside ballparks. I was always against it, but I allowed it because it was sponsored. But I was always against the hidden. You've seen this if you've gone to a game. It's all games. They put it was at a Ranger game, Sarah. They put a puck underneath one of the hats, or they put a baseball underneath one of the hats. And basically it's a 3-card Monte game, but it's done electronically, and you can make it so people can or cannot figure it out. You can set it to how hard it can be or how easy it can be. But in the real world, when people are putting money on it, that's gambling, and they're getting absolutely screwed on the street. If you see people gambling on the street, don't join them, because the people who are losing money are fixed. They're part of the house. And then all of a sudden you will enter thinking, oh, this is easy, and you will never win. Trust me, you're being scammed. So what baseball's doing, hey, we got Ohtani over here. We put a tourniquet around that story. There's nothing to see or hear about. He'll get sentenced. That'll be it. Sure, you're not focused on our superstar and on the Dodgers and on the top of the lineup. We present to you on a silver platter a meaningless utility player, and here's what he did. Forget illegal bookmaking, forget legal bookmaking. We found out, this is baseball talking, that he bet on baseball. And then, worse than that, as a member of the Pirates while injured, he may have bet on or against the Pirates. That's Pete Rose style. That's lifetime ban. That is coming down hard on a meaningless player to show the world we're very serious about the integrity of our game. We've got zero tolerance for any baseball betting. I think that should be the new rule. That it should be a very simple, instead of a 2-page gambling rule, here's what all the leagues should do. You want to bet on DraftKings, FanDuel, DraftKings, do whatever you want. Full disclosure, DraftKings is a sponsor. You know this. Or if you don't, you're new to the show. Thank you. We just looked at our numbers. Thank you for the percentage of new listeners. You want to bet legally? Go ahead. The only rule is this: don't bet on the sport in which you're playing. Do you want to make that the rule? I'm fine with it. What's wrong with betting on your own sport? Are we differentiating betting for your team, betting against your team? What's the reason why we had the issue with gambling with players to begin with? It was never about the illegal bookmakers. And that's what the media and that's what the league wants you to think, that we're deadly serious. Do not bet with illegal bookmakers, because bookmakers give you credit and then you are subject to the underbelly of gambling. You're subject to people in crime families who may break your kneecaps. Now, what the legal gambling companies do is they take your money up front, so you have to have the money in your account, and then you can gamble. Now, are there limitations? Basically, there's certain bets that if there's too much action, there's algorithms that study that, and they'll come off the board, or they'll be paid, they won't be paid. Did a guy go out with an injury in the first minute? Should we pay it? Should we not pay it? There's all sorts of amazing things that these companies do. They can track who's betting from what state, IP addresses, or a footprint like the old bugs that get caught in sap and then live for 10 million years. Believe me, everyone knows everything you're doing. You can do private surfing and private relay, and you can clear your cookies and cache. But believe me, everyone knows the website you were just on and what you were just doing. All of that said, what's the issue? When you're betting with your own money, if you lose all your money and you have other expenses, you are in debt, you are desperate, you are subject, liable, and I don't mean legally, you are apt to find a way to get money, because you need to deposit more money into your account, because you need to bet more money, because you got to get back to even. You got to get your money back. The only thing that has a problem and that could put a wedge into the integrity of on-field sports is a player who needs money for whatever reason, from house renovations to divorce to a gambling debt to any other type of debt. Would they be willing to find somebody to pay them to get a result? That's the issue. But we're very focused. Do not bet with illegal bookmakers. I don't think you should do it anyway, because I think you should always only bet with what you can afford to lose. That's the whole purpose. It's a form of entertainment. It's like casinos. Casinos will let you gamble all your money away, all of your Social Security, all of your paycheck, your decision. We're all over 21 here. No fake IDs allowed. You want to do it, do it. So baseball gets to announce today, and believe me, they will announce it today, that he is banned for life, because the theory will be, we got him, and we told you so. No baseball betting. What interests me about this is that each of the sports is dealing with this in its own way. We got done, what was it, 2 weeks ago, Coca? A month ago? I really can't even remember when the Jonte Porter situation happened. Remember what he was banned for? Remember what he did? Remember what the issue was? I was thinking about what Michael Porter is thinking now is Nuggets got eliminated. My point is separate, which is this is not a baseball issue. This is not a basketball issue. This is a all sports issue. And I want to make sure you've got it in your head that when you have an unscripted sport, and we can joke about the NFL script, we can joke about what the NBA wants. They don't want 2 quick series in the conference finals. They want New York and LA. But you can joke about that. But when it comes to gambling, none of it is a joke. The money that is being poured into the leagues and the risk that the leagues are at. So what if we changed our view of the risk tolerance and we simply made it very, very black and white? You bet on the sport you play in, you're banned for life. I want the union. How would the union not agree with that? You bet on any other sport in any other way with anybody else, no problem. I'm good with that. You want to make it even stricter that you can't bet with anybody? I just don't necessarily want people to differentiate and think it's okay that Ipe didn't bet on baseball, therefore we're going to let him go. But we need to feed something to you, so we're going to show you the frame of reference of what's worse. I'd rather we stop with the examples and just come out and say it, number one. And number two, let's stop thinking that DraftKings or any other company is not in the driver's seat as it relates to the league catching players, to maintaining the integrity of the game, number two, and to making sure that all laws are followed. They've got compliance departments that rival Wall Street firms. This should be a comfort to leagues, and yet leagues are scared of their own shadow. I've seen it. I've been in those meetings. There's another meeting going on right now in baseball, and those meetings are trying to figure out what to do with the injuries. And we've touched on it many, many times about Tommy John. I've told you as president of a team, injuries to me is way worse than lack of performance, way worse. It's the way mental errors are worse than physical errors. Talk to you about Tommy John. I've explained to you why players are getting hurt more. Why are there more Tommy Johns, or are there? Feels like there are. Jose Urquidy of the Astros, turns out that he's going to need a second Tommy John, it appears. Those 2 Baltimore pitchers, John Means and that other guy, Tyler Wells, Tommy John. The Marlins have a bunch of Tommy Johns. Everyone's got pitchers who are hurt. And baseball is spending their time at the owner's request trying to figure out how to stop the players from getting injured. Because owners, they basically run the commissioner's office, and they say to the commissioner's office, we've had it. We've had it with paying these players. So the commissioner's office says, no problem. Don't sign pitchers to long-term deals. The owners say, well, the guy to my left is going to do it, so therefore I've got to do it. And the commissioner says, if you all stop doing it, then that's the end of it. There won't be any more long-term deals. And then the teams say, but what about the pre-arbitration players who keep getting Tommy John? That's a problem. To which Samson said, give Tommy John to the minor leaguers and be done with it. To which people replied, but then they'll get their second Tommy John at some point. No problem. Then release the player. And then the owners say, I don't want to release a player who has a chance to help me win at a low price point. The circular nature of the issue is why it's such a crisis for baseball, because owners are getting very close to their breaking point. And if owners have a collective break, that will be to the detriment of players. It will be to the detriment of players during collective bargaining. Anytime owners are together on a topic, and it does not happen often, you can barely get a real 30-0 vote that the sky is blue. Barely. Ignore the way votes are announced because they retake them. As I've told you, once a vote passes, they retake it to make it unanimous. You can barely get a unanimous vote on what day of the week it is. But if there is any unanimity about how to deal with the injured list and the amount of money on the injured list, the players are not going to want that. So I have a plan. My plan is this, and baseball is going to work on this. They're going to figure out how to get pitchers less hurt, how to get starting pitchers because they view you, the fans, as people who want starting pitchers to last longer. You don't want bullpen games. The media gets all bent out of shape when there's a bullpen game in the World Series. I don't remember, Coca. Was it game 3 of the World Series was a bullpen game? Which, of course, is absurd to say that these rotations were not 3 deep. Remember how it works in the postseason. Often the starter for a series, the first game, is not your best pitcher because you can't line up your staff because you end up playing too many games or too long a series prior. There is no team for the last 40 years who goes 5 deep in the playoffs. The fact that you have bullpen games is all about the efficiency and the attempt by front offices to win those games. And they have analytics that show that the best way to win a game is not to let a pitcher go 3 times the lineup. The best way to win a game is to have pitchers throw 100 miles an hour. The best way to win is to have these pitchers pitch until their arms fall off. But David, he says to himself, if you're worried about injuries, then why do you play your pitchers and pitch your players that way? And there's the rub. What owners would love best is if they had pitchers who threw hard, who were able to get outs, and then got hurt on someone else's workers' comp. They got hurt on someone else's dime. They were released or jettisoned prior to getting hurt. We spend hours, and it's horrible. Coca, this is one of the things that Coca gets upset with me about for admitting. Hours trying to figure out how to get the last pitch out of somebody healthy and then have them get hurt for a different team once we trade him or once we release him. We evaluate players all the time based on that. And I'm not saying it's necessarily pleasant. And I look back the way sometimes you treat the players as props or chattel, but you are not wanting to hold the bag. It's no different than performance. When you sign an old player, who's the latest example, Coca? Who was left paying Nelson Cruz? This year, the Blue Jays are left paying Justin Turner. There's always the older guy who gets another year, the final year, and he ends up stinking. I've held the bag on players of 100%. And that is a sign of a bad front office, not a good one. Players are always looking for the extra year because they're not going to retire until you take the ball out of their hand, with almost no exceptions. They're not going to retire until no one's given them a job. Why would you give a job to someone who can't do their job? Think about it in the non-sports world. It's really funny. When you're interviewing for a job, do you imagine ever being able to get hired for something you cannot do and you will not be able to do? I can't imagine that. It happens in sports. The other thing that happens in sports, in the boardroom, in the C-suite, and it's not going to stop, is public financing for new ballparks or to renovate old ballparks. After the Marlins got Marlins Park, that's it. It's the end of the world. No more public financing. Really? After Buffalo Bills get $1 billion plus, oh, this can't be. This is outrageous. Let's stop. The Kansas City Chiefs and Royals, their referendum doesn't pass, and people say, that's it. We knew it. This has been the end of the public financing portion of our show. No. We told you on Nothing Personal, referendums always lose. You don't ever want a referendum. But that's not the end of public financing. What if the owner's a total... Oh, I was going to say a bad word. I don't want to say it. I don't want to sully David Tepper of the Panthers. But I will tell you, anyone who goes into business with David Tepper, the owner of the Carolina Panthers, you have to have your head examined. How many segments did we do where David Tepper has shown his colors? Forget, I'm not even talking about the fact that his team stinks. He can't hire coaches. He hires, he fires. He's paying 10 coaches at a time. He can't figure out how to win. That happens. Good men and women can own teams and not figure out how to win. David Tepper is a scoundrel for what he did in that community. The fact that he walked away from the practice facility. Practice? Remember that? They were in the middle of building a facility, and all of a sudden, there was no more money. And Tepper was like, you better get more public money. They said, hey, screw you. You put in the money. He said, screw you, not screw me. And they stopped building the thing, like ended up half built. Well, for whatever reason, David Tepper has announced a $800 million stadium upgrade plan. You surely, Leslie Nielsen, did not think that he was going to pay for that on his own. The other NFL owners would never allow it. Terrible precedent. And don't at me with Steve Ross did it all on his own. That's horse hockey. There was public money for Pro Player Stadium, now Hard Rock Stadium. Plenty of public money. This deal in Charlotte calls for $650 million in taxpayer money. But it's all coming from a tourism tax. Those are my favorite taxes. That's the tax that when you visit a place, you look at your hotel bill and you see a certain percentage for a bed tax or a convention center tax or a hotel tax, tourism tax. And you say, hey, that stinks. I better find a hotel website that gives me all in, including all these taxes and fees, because otherwise what's being advertised is totally wrong. And if you're using those tax dollars to fund stadiums, of course I'm supportive of that because that's what I did in Miami. The problem is that they're assuming that Tepper is going to invest $150 million. That's how you get to 800, 650 for the public, 150 from him. They're assuming that he's going to pay for CapEx. And the way they frame that, it's such funny PR use. What they say is the team plans to invest an additional $421 million over the life of the deal. And the deal is the 20-year additional lease where you get a 20-year non-relocation. I'll never leave Carolina, I promise. And I will pay all of the CapEx, I promise. Teams are lying when they say that. Where did the $420 million come from? Show me that in the agreement with Carolina. Bring it to me. I want to see the exact flow of funds and the exact contractual requirement for the additional investment of $421 million. Is it in the form of over time, over the 20 years? Does it add up to 421 total? So present valued back is closer to 200. Is there any opening that the money will be used only for blank sort of CapEx, new seats, new scoreboard, but anything else that happens, we're going to be silent or the public has to be helpful. Trans-frickin-parency. I loved the transparency with the Marlins Park deal. I told you all how it was going to be, where the money was coming from, what we were going to do, what we weren't going to do. I wore it like a badge. Damn right I was proud of it. And it was totally up to the politicians and then totally up to you if you like it or not like the deal. But let's not mislead anybody. I'm fascinated by, can you imagine if Tepper doesn't have to put the first money in? All this money, and then they're looking around and he's like, not doing it anymore. Changed my mind. Oh, Christ, what are we going to do? That's just Tepper. If he can get public money and your favorite team cannot get a deal done, then the people who are doing the deal on behalf of your favorite team stink at their job. Stink. Who doesn't stink is the agent for Justin Jefferson. I don't know if you saw this. Stop your yapping and yammering. Oh, running backs don't get paid. It's so sad. I can't find a place. Saquon has nowhere to go. We didn't tag him. We don't want him. We traded him. I don't remember where he signed. He's on like a opposing team. Where does he play now? Oh, these running backs don't get paid. You're right. But guess who does? He's on the Eagles. That's right. How about wide receivers? Do you see what he signed for? This is Justin Jefferson. He's now paid the most of any non-quarterback in the entire NFL. They gave him $35 million a year, which sounds like nothing, but it's something because $110 million is guaranteed. Not the Deshaun Watson 230. He can make up to $140 million. But the thing you look at is what's guaranteed and what's due at signing. 88.7 due at signing, $110 million to a player who's good. But is he the best wide receiver in football? I don't think that too many people would argue that he's amongst the best. But here's my question. When you are building a football team and you are in an industry where the revenue continues to increase and revenue is tied to salary cap, therefore the salary cap continues to increase, can we all agree that players' salaries are going to go up? And when I say player salaries, I don't mean by position. I mean player salary, the total number of the total amount of money paid to every player on your team times 32. That is industry-wide salary. It is a pegged number based on industry-wide revenue. The union doesn't care about allocation. So for all the people out there thinking the union is not protecting my favorite wide receivers, or how could it be that this guy got that and this guy got this? When the union's negotiating, they are way focused on all the members of their union and how they can say to them as the executive director, please renew my contract. We're about to get you blank in salaries. Go earn it. It's got to be paid. So it's like congratulating an agent when they sign a slot deal. When a player thanks his agent, when there's a slot deal, it's like a rookie contract or a drafted player in Major League Baseball. Slotted contracts, you don't need an agent. You don't need to be a genius to sign a slotted contract. You need an agent for all the other things, for getting equipment and for taking care of you when the sirens are on and for figuring out what to do if you ever attain free agency and to work with the union to figure out your arbitration, etc. So agents are not required when it comes to the total salary, but they are required when they have to figure out which players do teams want. Teams are pretty open about it. Met with agents so many times. We're open. We're looking for a bullpen reliever, but we need a guy from the left side. We're very righty heavy. Or we're looking for someone who's got power, not speed. We need some speed at the top of the lineup. Oh, your guy has power but no speed? No, we're not looking for that. What is more valuable in football is anyone other than a running back if you've been watching the NFL for the last couple of years. So to me, the news of Justin Jefferson getting this money is that, and the news will be made today and people will talk about it, what a great moment this is for him, what a great moment it is for this amount of money. Those moments are going to keep coming because the salary cap is going to keep going higher. So for example, Tyreek Hill. How about that guy with the Cowboys, Lamb? Or even the Bengals, the one Burrow throws to, Jamar Chase. Do you think they'll slot above Jefferson, below Jefferson? You'll hear a ton of shows debating where's Tyreek Hill going to fit. Doesn't matter. The fact is that they'll be in that range, whether they're $1 million below, $1 million above. The market for wide receivers seems positive now. Things change. What's not going to change is that the total amount of money going to the NFL continues to increase. That said, congratulations, Justin. You're rich. All right, we come back. Stay with us here if you're live on Nothing Personal with David Samson YouTube channel, please. We're on the DraftKings Network. We're going to take a break. We're going to review a documentary, and then we're going to talk about what went on with Pat McAfee. Woo! We'll be right back. Welcome back. Thank you for everything you do for Nothing Personal. Please go on davidsamsonpodcast.com. Please. Hopefully, I will see you in St. Louis on June 25th or Chicago on July 1st. After that, so many Coca. We have so many requests to go to so many different cities. Do you have the energy, Coca? We can do it. So I'm on a big documentary kick. I watched, this is recently for sure. I'm fascinated with Kevin Spacey because I've talked to you all about the art versus the artist and the internal struggle I have and what it feels like to listen to Michael Jackson. I've told you that I love Usual Suspects. I told you I loved House of Cards. It doesn't mean I'm not aware of what Kevin Spacey did. It is a problem for me personally. I'm responsible with this microphone. You're all responsible. We've talked about this, whether your platform is one person or a million people. We have to take responsibility. Should I be turning my back on Spacey? There's a new documentary called Spacey Unmasked. And there's a lot of people doing a lot of talking about things that he did to them, the way that he made them feel on set, how uncomfortable it was on the set of House of Cards. Kevin Spacey gives some interviews, not necessarily for the documentary, but the documentary uses a bunch of Kevin Spacey interviews as he is trying to get his career back. And so the debate is, does someone deserve to get their career back? When is it that what you've done is so unthinkable and so beyond the pale that second chances don't come in a society where forgiveness is absolutely embraced? It's sought after. Did you remember the Kevin Spacey situation that he was sued for inappropriate sexual behavior? And his first comment about it publicly was, and by the way, I'm sorry if I made anyone uncomfortable when I was younger, but I would like to announce, and I feel so happy to announce, I'm gay. I choose to live my life as a gay man. You know how I am. Live and let live. Don't care. People in the gay community and the queer community were very upset that he used that moment. He had hidden it his whole career. If you thought it would impact your career, you hide it too. People hide all sorts of things that they think will impact their career. It's way up there to say, oh, I'm hiding my sexuality. I'm hiding my fetishes. I'm hiding my biases, all in the name of making money and having a career. People are hiding stuff all the time. I'm hiding whatever illness I may have. I'm hiding my pregnancy. People hide stuff all the time, for better or for worse. But the community got very angry with him when he did that and turned on him. He has been trying to get his career and life back. He is working on all sorts of ways to do it. And so far, it's not working. And this documentary is not going to help. If you have a view of Kevin Spacey, don't watch Spacey Unmasked, because I don't believe you that you're willing to change your view. If you've never heard of Kevin Spacey or don't know anything about him, watch the documentary. Learn about him, what he did he do it, how he did it, why he did it, his background, his foreground, and his next ground. It's called Spacey Unmasked. Can we talk about sports media, if you don't mind? The irony of this conversation is thick. It's my business. It's my career. And I don't take it for granted. And I criticize other shows the way my show gets criticized. No problem. I'm open to anything anyone says about Nothing Personal. Have at it. I've enjoyed when I'm on the Pat McAfee show. I love going on Le Batard's show. I did a show once upon a time with Stephen A. Smith, not recently. Enjoyed it. The thing about what we're trying to do to you is we're competing for your time, which is why I always thank you for the 45 to 50 minutes. It's 50 minutes now because we're on the DraftKings network that you give me every single day. I'm appreciative of it. I don't take it for granted. I want to try to talk about things that interest you, talk about things that make you think, get you to disagree with me or agree with me. I'm totally fine either way. But the one thing that I'll always do is be respectful to you as the audience. I don't view many of these other very highly paid people as respectful to the audience. When you're willing to say something, the argument that Stephen A. Smith got into with Monica McNutt, when you're willing to call her out, when she's willing to call him out, and it's so uncomfortable that the other co-host is basically sitting there saying, man, we really got to go to commercial. Does that interest you? Because the money that they're paid would indicate that it does. The time that you spend watching it would indicate that it does. And I want to believe in you, the audience, more than these shows believe in your intellect, in your interest, in your time allocation. Does yelling the loudest from the top of the highest mountain really make these people the smartest people or the most interesting? I have not one time since October of 2019 said something on nothing personal that I didn't believe in. Not one time. Not once. For the purpose, for the sole purpose. Hey, let's get some clicks. We're about to be a free agent. We have free agency coming up. We don't talk about it the way Stephen A does. Just don't. Pat McAfee has been an absolute thorn in the side of ESPN. You can say anything you want. The power play that's gone on over ESPN, McAfee is delivering and winning, but there's going to come a point you can't beat the corporate behemoth. I don't care what level of talent you are. It will always, always end up with you losing. It's the same way a power struggle in baseball between a player and a GM, or a manager and a GM, or a GM and an owner. The higher you are, the more power struggles you win. Stephen A. Smith is purposefully doing these level of debates and hot takes because there are analytics that show that this is actually what you do want. I still don't want to believe it. Pat McAfee does the show he does. He exactly everything, calling Caitlin Clark a white bitch, and then fully apologizing for it afterwards. The business is such that if we apologize, we are asking for your forgiveness, and then you decide when you forgive and when you don't forgive the audience. That's a very tough way to operate, isn't it? Thinking that, hey, all I have to do is apologize, and every single time you'll forgive, and then we'll move on. You didn't do it with plenty of the actors. You don't do it with every host. And once you're gone because you're completely replaceable. Here's what Stephen A. and Pat don't realize that I've always realized. We are incredibly replaceable. At the height of your game, you may feel that you're not. In your own business, you may feel that you're not. But trust me, you are. The only people who are not replaceable are the owners. I was a team president, replaceable. Host of Nothing Personal, replaceable. Host of ESPN First Take, replaceable. Host of the Pat McAfee Show, replaceable. All I want to do is grab everyone who's got these microphones and show them a movie that I love called Ed TV, where Matthew McConaughey, if you haven't watched it, please watch it. And it's exactly what I'm talking about. There's a reality TV show about Matthew McConaughey. Woody Harrelson plays his brother. Jenna Elfman, who I love, Keeping the Faith, plays the girlfriend of both at one time or another. Ellen DeGeneres is a TV executive with Rob Reiner. It's a great movie to watch. Donnie Most is in it from Happy Days. Anyway, it's the biggest thing ever. And then the show ends, and guess what? Everyone who had stopped their life to watch the show, life just went on without the show. Life will go on without these amount of hot takes. Hot takes are having a minute right now, no question. But for sustainability, for keeping your audience over the long term, not for years, but for decades, and for decades and decades, what do? You respect them. and the subject matter. What's going on with the WNBA and Caitlin Clark and the debate around it is making me insane. We've touched on it. I'm going to touch on it again. If you think that this is not a societal issue, then you're missing the boat. This isn't about the WNBA. Stop debating whether or not the WNBA is big enough or small enough, or is it good attention or is it bad attention? Should they have gotten more attention in previous years? None of that is the point. The point is that in an election year, in a presidential election year, frankly, in every year, all we're done is fed negativity, and we're fed race baiting commercials, ideas, and concepts and thoughts, whether it's religious based or color based or sexual orientation based. It's like we're being programmed to be an extremist, and we're being programmed because that is what we feel is the only way to get heard. When did that become a thing? That is scream the loudest with the most absurd takes or the most obscure, absurd thoughts about race. This WNBA deal, of course, it's about race and sex and sexuality. That's what everyone's going to try to convince you of. And I'm going to try to convince you that it's happening because people refuse to take any position other than what they take during the course of their life as it relates to everything else in their life. And then they just apply it everywhere like a blanket of sticky, sappy mess that ends up getting you caught in a web of anger, loudness, frustration, violence, vitriol. And then what? It causes loneliness. Don't think that there's power in the numbers of prejudice. Don't think there's power in the numbers of racism. There's loneliness. There's pathos. That is my view of what's happening here with the Caitlin Clark situation, with sports media. I think it's going to change. It's not sustainable, is it? Eventually, the audience and the sponsors are going to say, hey, we're bored of this. Nothing personal pick of the day. I'm bored of losing my nothing personal pick of the day, and I'm done. Done. I am done betting on the Blue Jays. I love you, Canada. I love you, Toronto. I love you, Montreal. But dang it, this is not the Blue Jays year. I thought last night, Kevin Gausman, you got to come. You got to beat Baltimore. You just have to. Gives up 5 runs in the early innings and they lose. Come on. Offense sputtering. We're 75 and 85. I got 2 interesting picks for you today. I'm going 2 picks, 1 short favorite, 1 heavy favorite. Let's start with the heavy favorite. What was the line on Imanega last time he pitched? The Japanese pitcher who should be getting more attention than he is. Should be getting more attention than Yamamoto. He's been better. And I think he had a .00 Blutarski ERA, and then some team crushed him, gave up 7 runs. I think it's his first start since then. Guess what? The Cubs are playing the White Sox. The White Sox, the Tommy Pham-led White Sox. The White Sox who can't win a game, those White Sox. Imanaga is minus 290. Stay away from that. The White Sox are going to win a game eventually. Not tonight. I fully expected to be minus 490 with Imanaga coming off a bad start and pitching against the White Sox. We're taking him at 290. And then we've got our other co-Cy Young leader, Seth Lugo, the brilliant Seth Lugo in the Kansas City Royals. The team that you're going to have to get used to seeing in the playoffs this year and for years to come. They're good. And it's not like they've been. Here's the thing. Can we just mention people thinking the Royals, that what a terrible organization? Anyone remember the World Series they won and the World Series they appeared in? Anybody want to remember that? Because it wasn't that long ago. And they then had to rebuild the way all middle and small revenue markets have to do. They've done great. Seth Lugo is minus 105 against the Guardians, and we're taking the Royals over the Guardians. It's actually a big matchup. Taking the Cubs and the Royals. One thing I want to mention from yesterday, I do not like going back to the sports media conversation. There are certain personal biases that I have, and I really try not to let them get in the way of how I feel about Scott Boras, and you know why. I've told you the stories of dealing with him and his dealings with Jose Fernandez and why it's personal. In a show that's nothing personal, there are very few personal things in my life, very few. Much to the chagrin of my family, there are very few things that I take personally or that I consider personal. What Scott Boras did to that family, that's personal. And I let that get in the way of properly analyzing the topic when we were talking about Juan Soto and his free agency and Boris's players. And I said that you have to be a World Series champion to be considered a top 100 player. I'm happy to admit this. Back to what we were talking about. When I'm wrong, I'm wrong. This isn't a correction. This is people pointing out to me after the show yesterday, you have to be a top 100 player and have a ring to be top 100. What about Ichiro, Ernie Banks, Ken Griffey Jr., Barry Bonds, Tony Gwynn, Ted Williams? Oy vey. I went too far yesterday. There are plenty of top 100 players who don't have rings. Not only was I wrong that Juan Soto had a ring with Washington, but I was wrong to think that you needed a ring to be considered a top 100 player. And I should have known that given my love of Patrick Ewing, my undying love and belief that he is one of the top players of all time, and he's ringless. And I let you all down, and I apologize for that. I want to finish with something that's going on, just a quick moment here about tennis and golf, both separately. There's been a lot of attention at the French Open, a lot of attention about how matches were ending at 3 a.m. when Djokovic had to play till 3 a.m. and that upset Coco Gauff. There are players who are talking about in order to be successful, we have to be healthy. In order to be healthy, we have to get sleep. In order to get sleep, we can't be starting a match at 10:30 p.m. that could go 4.5 hours and go till past 3 in the morning. I get it, but that's not really how it works in sports. There's a schedule that's set, and every once in a while, things happen. We've got rules in baseball. Can't start a game after a certain time. We'll violate the rule if we have to, if there's a situation, a scenario. You're not going to get a rule change based on a 3 a.m. match that happened because of bad weather, etc. So that's not where you need to focus. Where I'd be focusing is on the other side, on age. And this came up because there's a story about Miles Russell, a golfer who's 15 years old. He's turning pro. He was invited to join a tournament. He's going to be on the tour, which is just incredible to me. He's 15 years old. And you'd say to me, David, that's silly. Why would you care about that? Since young players are playing baseball, you sign 16-year-olds and put them in the minor leagues, or 18-year-olds. That is true. And we surround them generally with other people their age. I believe that the age limit for an individual sport like golf or like tennis is far different than a sport where you are part of a team. I've watched what 19-year-old or 20-year-old baseball players do on teams when they're around 25-year-olds and 28-year-olds and 30-year-olds, and they're forced to grow up way too fast. When 18-year-olds are pro, but teams with other 18-year-olds, it works. When they're on teams with older players or alone in an individual sport, it doesn't work. Careers flame out. The majority. Why is Miles Russell going pro now? Because that's all his parents ever wanted for him. Took him out of school. He's been focused on being a professional golfer since day one, and now they've got their wish. He's a professional golfer. The kid is 15. What are the odds that Miles Russell becomes the next Tiger Woods? De minimis, almost zero. What are the odds that the young players who are forced to turn pro out of desire, that they actually become consistent, long-term good pros? Very, very small. That's why we have age limits. That's why we have rules. And for these tournaments to say, no, we don't want to do it, why is it that you think that golf tournaments will take in a Miles Russell? It's just business. Bring on the next Tiger, baby. This is nothing personal.